In this video, we'll be taking a look at Canton, Ohio. You can see it here. Ohio, one of my favorite old world states. I've covered quite a few of the cities that you can see here. Population demographics, modern day sitting around 70,000, turn of the 20th century 30,000. Not a very large city when we're going back into the Civil War, American Civil War period onward into the turn of the century. And if you're familiar with the channel, you'll know that I like to investigate the architecture of the past through a different lens. The suggestion on this channel being that humanity has been knocked off its intended timeline and hijacked. And what we're looking at are the remains of a civilization that once existed that has been overtaken by a parasitic force. I believe our consciousness was reset after a great cataclysm occurred here. Much of the realm in which we exist was destroyed, but much of it was preserved. And I think what we're seeing in a lot of the infrastructure are the remains of a previous civilization. And this is a process that seems to have gone on gradually over time. Not the cataclysm part, but the overlaying of our consciousness with a new timeline and a new reality. And we call into question the powers that be here in this realm as we know them, the monarchies and the royal societies and the educational institutions and the religious organizations all appear to be guilty parties, having been overtaken and taken control of the realm, and designating a lot of the architecture that we're seeing as their own. And this is actually a good example of the juxtaposition between the means the people at the time were said to have had. You can see the horse and buggies in the foreground here, and the magnificent architecture that exists, and the infrastructure as well, the curb work, the streets, the civil engineering involved with a lot of these cities is quite marvelous as well. And these are the types of images that we would expect to see. Here we have some sort of steam shovel contraptions and some digging going on. This is very paltry when you put that up against the architecture we see here. They're so frivolous with the multi-storied brick structures and the ornate features, according to our narrative. And the explanation is that they had more time and they were just more skilled. And the suggestion here on this channel is that there's much more to that story than just an innocent loss of ability down through time. In fact, there was an intentional reset of our consciousness. And at many levels, this is a battle to regain our conscious selves. And that battle requires a certain amount of collective awareness. And that seems to be the motivation for my channel, is to help expand this awareness that our historical timeline is not the linear timeline of destruction and war and famine and disease, but in fact there is a higher state of humanity that is being hidden from our purview. And when we observe the architecture of the past and attempt to reconcile that with the story of the past that we have been given, I think we can find some clarity in there being a disconnect between the two, and in fact that we were much more than we have been told. And you can point the finger at many of the World's Fairs that occurred realm-wide, not just in the States or in Europe. These were all over the place. They appear to be a coordinated resetting of our awareness. This is interesting. This is the old auditorium. If we go back here, we have the dome. We don't have the statue. We go here, there's no dome. And this really grainy one shows us the dome with a very large statue on top. And a little research into the World's Fairs of the late 1800s, early 1900s will illustrate what they were trying to present to the people of the time. Now remember, according to the story, we are told many of these people were new to the locations that they were living in, and they were being given a story about the history of those locations and all locations. They were being presented with technologies at a rapid pace, invented by really a small handful of European or American, Anglo-European inventors. So really a narrative begins to take shape with what the people were being presented. And it's interesting because we see so many of these old structures. This is an old schoolhouse, the first high school from 1870 in Canton, 1870. There's about 8,000 people living there. This is quite the undertaking. Architecturally, these are the remains of a previous civilization. And it all really seems to kick off at the middle of the 19th century, or the middle of the 1800s. We have the leaders of this reset, the Vatican and the Crown, implementing this new way of thinking, the new way of viewing the world, giving us a much longer timeline and a much larger space of existence. And I think all of that serves to provide us with the illusion that we are insignificant, and provides us with a bit of a godless reality. Really, there's nothing special about us, when in fact the truth is the exact opposite, and we are very special. Here we have a children's home. The vast amount of children's homes and orphanages that one can research coming from that time period is also lends to this theory that there was a reset going on, and that these parentless children were being taught this new reality. Here we have the Haralamboo's Church, it's called, being moved. Nice looking structure. You can see them moving it here. So a preservation effort. It's always nice to see that. So many of these old world structures meet the wrecking ball. And typically, if you're seeing the postcard version and not necessarily photographs, modern day photographs, I have tried to find them. It's likely that many of these don't stand anymore. And as I always like to say, if you know any more about the area, please don't hesitate to add your comment to the comment section below. So many of these structures take the form of churches. The massive overrepresentation of places of worship coming out of that time period is a major flaw in the timeline that they laid out for us. And so often the timeline they allow for these to be constructed does not fit. This is not believable. So many of them are such short periods of time for the construction of these things. And really, when you add it all up, you start to see that it's completely implausible that these churches were building at such a rapid pace, at such a high level. Sometimes I'll get the attempt to rebut the old world narrative, saying that they had specialists come in to build a lot of these structures. And if you cover the vastness, the large amount of structures like I do, you'll realize that that's not possible, because this type of construction was going on everywhere. I want you to really reconcile why the Trinity Reformed Church had to look like a government building at the turn of the century in Canton, Ohio. It's completely illogical. You certainly wouldn't see it in the modern day, at a time when our population eclipses the population of that time, at a time when our technological know-how is much, much higher, we are told. And one of the things that's difficult to see, just by looking at the photographs, is that there appears to be technologies and understanding of technologies that we have lost and that have been removed from our perception. The technologies we're familiar with, the internal combustion engine, electricity as we know it, all of these things were given to us by these same bad actors. Many of them being introduced through the World's Fairs, actually, and of course the robber barons. Why do we think they call them the robber barons? Here's the city hall, having a very short lifespan, being demolished right in that time period where urban renewal is destroying remnants of the old world across the Western world. It would be a magnificent structure if it was still standing. Here's the modern version of the city hall, and very often we have some form of sculpture in front of these modern buildings, really reminding me of some sort of ritual going on here, some energetic ritual going on here. There it is again. Magnificent red brick city hall, built in the 1880s when there's about 15,000 people living in Canton, we're told. We also have a spectacular courthouse, and we're told this one is built in 1895. We don't have a start to finish date. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm seeing two different dates here. I'm seeing 1870 and I'm seeing 1895 on the Wikipedia page. So, and that's another problem we have when we look back in time. This is curious as well because at the time, 1895, if that's the date we're going to go with, that was when America was in the grips of a depression after the Panic of 1893. Yet what we're seeing is magnificent architecture going up everywhere. We have the Greco-Roman styling here and the timeless looking statues and the dome, and then you have the bell. So the bells are a large part of the old world, tied in with the frequency and energetics. So what I think happened, hypothesizing here, is that our frequency was lowered. I think we were existing on a much higher frequency, and all of this infrastructure was a part of that. Here we have the arrival of William McKinley, who was assassinated at the Buffalo World's Fair. And this is his hometown, Canton, Ohio, arriving at the courthouse there. Again, you have the juxtaposition of the majesty of the structure and the technology of the people at the time. The Cortland Hotel, don't have much. It was demolished in 92, we're told, but they did save the entranceway arch. And I have seen this done as well in other places. And there's something about the texture and precision of the building materials of the old world that, once you've done a bit of research, really indicate to you that you're seeing something that's not something we do or really could do with any sort of ease here in the modern day. And I think it shouldn't be overlooked, the infrastructure as well, the streets, the street lights, the curb work, the rail cars, the spacing of the buildings themselves, like everything was built knowing that these technologies for transportation were going to be invented. See how wide the streets are here. And a large part of the narrative has to do with these streetcars being originally made to be pulled by horses. You can just see on the side here, the side of a horse. But I don't see it anywhere else. But difficult part of the narrative to believe. And it certainly appears with this research now, approaching a decade, really, this old world research, it's relatively new. It certainly appears that a lot of visual evidence has been tampered with. A lot of construction photos appear to be faked. A lot of the skies in the background seem to have been whited out so as to present a false skyline and potentially hiding other modes of transportation they had at the time, such as air travel, dirigible air travel. We do know the story of the dirigible air travel was basically snuffed out with the Hindenburg disaster that appears to be yet another false flag in the 20th century, putting an end to that mode of transportation. Here we have another church looking like a government building, the First Baptist Church. Again, I ask you, how is that plausible? Why would the Baptists in Canton need to make a building looking like a government building? It really isn't such a stretch. Very difficult to complete the upper reaches of these types of buildings, especially at that early time period. In the modern day, you would build most of this roof structure on the ground and plop it in with a crane, but that's not a technology they had at the time. Yes, that's right, no shortage of churches. Here we have the First Methodist. Can you envision them trying to build such a structure in the modern day? Can you imagine how long it would take? Yet, we are led to believe that the late 1800s, this was going on everywhere. It simply does not pass the sniff test or the smell test, if you ask me. Now, it's difficult because when we look into the past, we still have their framework that we have been brainwashed since birth to look back in time. That lens, that framework, that's part of that firm grip they have on us is that disbelief that kicks in when you begin to question their narrative. Say, well, how can that possibly be? What about the native populations that we were told were here that allow for their reset narrative and timeline to make sense? Yet when we look into that story, we realize that their history has been erased, and much like all the rest of our history has been erased. That you really can't hang your hat on the narrative that they have been selling us now for at least 150 years. That much of that narrative as well was introduced through the World's Fairs. And I will certainly agree that craftsmanship has dwindled over the last 150 years, that there was a higher level of craftsmanship. And my explanation for that is that, yes, the people of the time were closer to that consciousness, and they've been gradually moving us away, using technology to do so, moving us away from having that know-how. The same could be said for music and our ability to perform and play instruments. The old world seems to be riddled with performing arts centers, opera houses, amphitheaters. So again, the frequency of the old world, not a foreign entity, not something we can't really, let's say just something much closer to us, I think, than we realize, the old world. Here we have a Duberhampton watch factory. This one coming from 1907. This looks like a receipt of some sort. Look how massive that structure is. And I do have another look at it. This is just a rendering, of course. 1887, they're telling us this was constructed at a time when there was about 15,000 people. They had the means, apparently, to build a fountain. This would be before plumbing as well, but build a structure like this. And notice the difference and how these have been decapitated. And even at that early time period, in 1907, these are not what they once were. So some food for thought there as well. We have also high schools, looking like they could be city halls. And I do realize many of these are grainy and not the highest quality photographs, but this is the intention of this video, is to put everything in from this location in a single package for you to view, just to just so we can all be in one place. And I have some theories on some of these old hotels as well. I wonder if they used the base of some older structures and they built on top of them. It's very hazy to try to reconcile the timelines. It's almost like I have mentioned before, there's an overlaying of the existing timeline, that the trajectory we were on, with this false timeline that we find ourselves in now. We have an old high school, and then we have a performing arts area in that high school with coffered ceiling. Beautiful. Here's the Opera House, we are told. The Lewis Opera House, with a date of 1898 on it. Again, right in that same time period where everything seems to be shooting up. The public library, we have covered on this channel quite a bit. The libraries, free libraries from Mr. Andrew Carnegie. No doubt this would be one of them. Free to everyone. Go in and read the books that they want you to read. We have benevolent philanthropists helping us along in society. Well, we know we can't trust those benevolent philanthropists, can we? We know that they're really not looking out for humanity's best interests. And we're pretty late in the game as far as that goes. Here you have lower sections as well. The Iron Company, again, why the need to put turrets on the corner, towers and turrets. There you have the mode of transportation being shown to us again. This would be the Masonic Temple with the upper columns. We have another performing area within that structure. There it is again. And we have the McKinley National Memorial. Very well scaped. There's the interior of that. Reminded me of a lot of what we see in places like Washington, D.C. Making me wonder, really, what else is underneath the grass in this area here. You can see the terracing going on here. We have some construction photos, which really call into question what they're telling us about this site. Already this has been terraced up here, so they don't really have a lot of bodies on hand for this. So my suggestion here is there's a lot of fakery going on here with these old photos, especially when you find them in official historical collections. Now that's me. I'm very untrusting of any sort of official documentation, officialdom in general. I have a problem with. I think that the control is not so much overt, but it's that consciousness overlaying. So many of us will cling to it because it's the only thing we really know is what we have been taught through officialdom. So this type of content that I'm creating here will make one angry if they choose to hold on to the narrative of the inheritors. And then what they'll do is actually a Mr. Smith effect, like the Matrix. They'll defend the inheritors' narrative. I certainly encourage you to question those narratives. There's a block and tackle. No doubt they're telling us this is how they were getting all the stones in place. That would be the technology required at the time to perform that task. This is the Molly Stark. Right now it's a park, apparently, and it's quite run down. The Molly Stark Park Sanatorium, I believe. But you're still getting a lot of, again, the archways, the columns, the architecture itself is no small feat. No shortage of these places for people to be kept when you're in an unhealthy state, whether it's physical or mental. The Mount Marie College, I could find no other visual of this one, but that's a magnificent structure as well. And we have the Oddfellows, of course, their presence being felt. I did make a video on the Oddfellows if you would like to know more about their presence. And I do make these videos not to bring us down about our past, but to allow us to recognize that that we can go back to something better. We can deprogram the inheritor's narrative. Here's the old post office. Like you needed post offices to look like churches apparently back then. And we can envision something a lot brighter. And I think there are resources. I don't think we'll not ever know about our past. I think much of this is being hidden from us in this reality, and there's more coming, I think, as far as us learning about who we know. And I think if we go down the road a couple of years from now, it could be a very different place as we come through this dark time and into the light. It's the old savings bank. Why wouldn't you build a savings bank to look like that? Amazing. We're coming to the end of the file, and we still have no shortage of red brick buildings with towers. So let's bring back the bells, and let's raise our frequency and get away from the inheritor's narrative and explore the old world together. I appreciate you being here. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.